Hello everybody, it's Claire back with another art journal video, and this little video here is just showing you the page that I created, and that's what I'm going to be talking you through. So I started off using a piece of loose craft cardstock to do the tip-in page with the letters on. I'm using Dina's Alpha block stencil to give me that nice uniform letter shape. So to try and explain how I'm making this work, I'm going to keep it so that on the left hand side of the card, first of all, there's a little space so that I can tip it in easily to my journal, and then also the three words "you are enough" are going to be one underneath each other, and they're going to line up down the left hand side of the cardstock as well. So when it's tipped in, you'll be able to see through, and the edge on the right hand side that overlaps the page underneath won't be lined up, but it'll be quite interesting how it sits. So yeah, I'm just using the stencil. So another thing to remember when you're using a stencil to do this is to make your letters touch each other so that they will remain joined together, because if you don't and you cut them out, they will just fall apart. And you won't have that kind of piece that's all holding itself together because you've got those little joins between each letter. I really hope that I've explained that. I feel like I've explained it in a really muddled way, but I'm hoping that I haven't, and that when you watch what I'm doing here you will understand a bit more clearly. Oh dear, this is difficult. I know what I want to say. Sometimes the words just will not come out. There we go. Right, so you can see there I've got the words "are enough." So also with the word "enough," you notice that I started with the H and wrote it backwards to make sure that I could fit it into the space that I'd got. The reason I did that is just in case I needed to squish any of the letters up, just to make them fit a bit better. So then I decided I wouldn't go straight in with my craft knife. I would go in with my scissors, because this cardstock wasn't attached to my journal. It was much easier to just get rid of as much of the excess cardstock as possible, meaning that I had less work to do with my craft knife. So yeah, that's why I am faffing about with my tiny, teeny little scissors and just cutting some of the excess card away. Is actually so much quicker, but you know, it's not always possible, is it, when you've got it attached in your journal? So yeah, so first of all, starting off with the scissors and just cutting away the excess, and then I'm going to go in for the little fiddly bits with my craft knife and my cutting mat and cut those final bits out, just to get it to the point where it is ready to be tipped into my journal. So the letters like O don't have a central part cut out on the stencil set from Dina, but I have been adding those in because I like how it looks. I think it looks nice when those bits are cut out too, but obviously you don't have to do that. And this craft knife is my trusty scalpel style of craft knife, my favourite one to use. And this is obviously sped up quite a bit as well. So you can start to see how those letters are touching each other as well. You can see that the little gaps in between are just where the different shapes don't quite meet and tessellate, but each letter touches the one previous and after, which is what means that it makes it possible to be able to do the cutout style with it. So you'll also notice on the left hand side of the cardstock I've got that straight edge. That is where it's going to be taped into my book. So I'm using some of this craft coloured gummed tape. So you wet it and it goes sticky. it's perfect for using in the craft journal because it's a very similar colour to the craft cardstock. And I'm just cutting it down because it was a little bit wide. And then I'm just going to stick that in like that. Nice and easy. And it sticks in place really easily. So a little piece on the front and on the back. I'm just using a water brush, as you can see, to just get that nice and wet and then stick it down. And I haven't had any problems with anything that I've stuck in with that tape falling out at all. It works perfectly. Okay, so now that's stuck into my page. I'm then adding some clear gesso onto this page. I do find that my different mediums work much better in this large craft journal when there is some gesso on the background. So then I've gone in with 3 colours. I've got fuchsia, magenta and carnation. Just picking those up on my brush and just swiping those down my page. And then this is a graffiti stencil from Natalie May's scrapbooking, and I was just trying to lift some of the paint off, but it wasn't massively successful. I think this isn't a technique I've had a lot of success with as the first layer in this journal. Certainly if that paint had been dry, if that layer was dry and I'd put another layer of paint on top of it and I'd done the reductive stenciling through it, it would have been much more successful. So yeah, this is the Circles for Painting stencil from Dina Wakley, and I think this is carnation paint, and I'm using a kind of pouncing motion with the blending tool. You get a much nicer application of paint through the stencil. It's a little bit more opaque than if you kind of smoosh it around. You get a much thinner layer of paint. So I'm just pulling those circles down the page just to create that movement going down there. And then I decided I was going to add a magazine image into my journal. So I found this lady, really cool angle as well. So I decided I would use her. I'm going to cut her out. And then she'll be added onto my page. So first of all, I'm using the one of the stencils from the Inner Line stencil set. I have cut this one up into strips. I have just ordered myself another one, which I won't be cutting up. I'm going to leave it as it is. So I think if I'd thought about this when I first bought this stencil, I would have bought 2. But you don't always know, do you, at first when you get these things? So then I'm just going in with another piece of the Inner Line stencil set and just layering up some of that stenciling. This is white this time, so bringing in a little bit of contrast as well. And then all the time I'm just popping that image back on the page just to see how it's going to look. This is the Mantras stencil. And as you can see, because I don't clean it, some of the spaces where some of the text is, it's gone really small because it's got quite clogged up with paint. So I have replaced this stencil and I am going to keep it clean, I promise. So then I'm using a blending tool, and this is night paint that I'm using to go over my cutout letters. I found that using a blending tool is one of the best ways to get paint on a cutout element like this without it kind of falling in all the holes and the cutout parts quite as much as it does with a paintbrush. So I've used night because it's not quite as harsh as the black. And because this page is nice pinks and things, I didn't want the black to be too stark against it. So that's why I decided I would use night for the letters instead. So then I've just got a couple of little watercolour hearts that I've painted onto some spare mixed media paper, and I'm just going to cut those out. And she's going to have one in each hand, kind of to cover up the weird handbag affair that's going on. Don't really like that. I liked the image of the girl, but that was just a bit weird. There, just sticking those in place. Giving her a crown, because why not? Why not indeed? The crown was too big for her head, which will never do, will it? So then that'll be stuck in place as well. Okay, then it was time to, I added some washi tape onto the page as well. Decided I wanted to cover where the tipping was. So I've just added some washi tape there, and then I brought it across onto the page as well, just so that it would kind of marry the two things up and it wouldn't look like it was an afterthought, which it clearly was. So I'm also using my Signo Uniball in white to just outline those letters, and you can see immediately it just pops them out, doesn't it? Makes them much more in the foreground than they are at the moment. I mean, and easier to read as well. They weren't difficult to read, but aren't they even easier to read now? So just spending a bit of time outlining letters can make all the difference. Okay, and then some white paint. And I'm just using, I've got a little collection of empty glue sticks and cardboard tubes and all sorts of things that have got different size circles, which are fabulous for just stamping circles onto journal pages. So I'm just using some of those to stamp some circles, and then a typed ledger paper quote on there, and it was pretty much finished. I've also added some dots on there that I've edited out, but me doing that, but you don't need to see that. And there it is. There's the finished page with the tip-in cut-out letters. It's a fun thing to try, so have a go. If you do, don't forget to tag me. I'd love to see what you create. So thanks for watching. I hope you've been inspired. Yeah, and I hope to see you again soon.